Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Fantasy 420, where today we are going to be continuing our look into the 2019 fantasy baseball season with our This or That series. So I just wanted to remind everyone, like I did yesterday, unlike fantasy football and fantasy basketball, this is an extremely long 162-game season. So if you have not signed up for a fantasy baseball league and might be deterred by the fact that you missed the first week, I highly encourage you to rethink that and do so. Fantasy baseball is extremely fun. If you're not a huge baseball fan, it could give you a little bit of appreciation for the sport, the grind, the skill involved, and I highly encourage reconsidering joining up a baseball league, giving it a try, or if you're a veteran, just jumping back on the horse and getting back into it. It's super fun. So for the This or That series, I'll link later on in the video at the end, as well as the rest of my preseason MLB videos. We're going to be discussing two players who play the same position and are being picked in about the same round of a fantasy baseball drafts. So today we're going to be talking about two National League West starting pitchers who are hoping for a bounce back in 2018, and they're being picked in about the 10th round. And those two names are Madison Bumgarner, who's being picked at around pick 115 according to fantasypros.com aggregate rank site. And we're going to be taking him up against Robbie Ray, who is going up as the 118th overall player, according to fantasypros.com. So before we make a verdict, we need to present the evidence like in our other videos. And we're going to start with their career numbers up to this point and their last season 2018 recap, which is also extremely important. And we'll begin the discussion with Madison Bumgarner, aka Madbum. He was called up at age 19 in 2009 and made his first real debut season the next year in 2010 at age 20. So he's been pitching for a really long time, and he's a veteran in the league. It's his 11th season playing for San Francisco, so he's always been there. And he pretty much dominated from 2011 to 2016. You could argue he was the best pitcher in starting baseball from that point. In that time span, it included 4 All-Star games. He finished top 11 in the Cy Young voting 5 times. He won 3 World Series in that span, and he had 1 World Series MVP in possibly the best ever postseason for a starting pitcher. So this guy has nails, really good, no nerves, one of the best pitchers of the generation with Clayton Kershaw, a few other names, but really love what he's done through his career. And then in 2017 and 2018, he's dealing with a little bit of an injury performance, dealing with a rebuilding roster. They're moving on from that 2010 early dynasty team and transitioning to a younger team. And maybe the innings catching up to him. Like I said, he's been pitching since he's 19 in the major leagues. So that's an extremely long time. Whatever it was, it led to 2 shortened and overall very mediocre seasons. In 2018, he had 129 innings pitched, which is obviously not very much. And compared to his 162-game expected 220 pitches, obviously very underwhelming. 6 wins, extremely low. Probably had something to do with extremely anemic hitting lineup, not giving him a lot of run protection, mixed in with the low inning total. That's very low considering his 15-win expected total. 3.26 ERA, not too bad, a little bit higher than his 3.03, but nothing to be up in arms about. But his 109 strikeouts to 129 innings pitched, obviously, like we try to mention in the videos, We like our starting pitchers to be around a K per inning pitched. The better, the better. But when you're below that, it gives you a little cause for concern. And that's obviously a little bit behind his 214 strikeouts to 220 inning expected. But a little surprising with Bumgarner looking at his stats. He's only had 3 seasons where he's had more strikeouts overall than innings pitched. So he can get those seasons, but they were earlier in his career when he was dominating. So he might be past that. I would lead that to be the case. So still a good player, possibly a great player. We could talk about his incentives later, but all those things recently sort of give you cause for concern. Moving on to Robbie Ray. He was called up at age 22. His first real season was at age 23, though, in 2015. Obviously a little bit younger than Bumgarner. He had a very mediocre first couple seasons in major leagues, and then he had a huge breakout 2017. He did regress a little bit last year. So just like Bumgarner, we had a 2018 regression and hoping for a bounce back. And it's been historically hard for him to put together a full season. His most for innings pitched in a season is 174. He's been at around 120 a couple times, and that gives you a lot of cause for concern. Bumgarner's had multiple 200 innings plus season. Robbie Ray hasn't even been there. So the one thing that is his huge saving grace is his strikeouts. He's a big strikeout arm. Anytime he reaches the mound, he can rack up a bunch of Ks. So we'll move on to what he did last year. In 2018, he only pitched 123 innings. So just like Bumgarner, very shortened because of injuries, not contending at the end, various concerns with him and the Diamondbacks. So that's compared to expected 183 innings. So once again, expected below 200. He only got 6 wins, which is below his 10 win totals. Once again, like Bumgarner, poor lineup, a 3.93 ERA. That was bumped up over a whole run from his 2.89 ERA in 2017. So once again, saw a regression in that realm, which was pretty large. And that's still better than his expected 4.04. So rocked a lot in his early career. Only had one superb season and then that other season below 4. So a little bit risky on getting blown up. But man, those strikeouts, even in that shortened inning season last year, he still managed 165 strikeouts to 123 innings pitched. So that's insane. A shortened season, you'd expect some regression or maybe him not to accumulate those numbers. But he got 40 more strikeouts in innings pitched, which is very elite. And that's compared to his 219 strikeout expected to 183 innings pitched. So they're expecting around 40 strikeouts more. If he can rack up innings, he could get way more than 40. So that's a big part of the conversation. Moving on to our next pieces of evidence for each player, it's important to see what each team or player did in the offseason. And starting with Bumgarner and the Giants, they're quite frankly in the middle of a rebuild. It's a little bit hard for them because half of their lineup and starting pitchers, they're stuck with veterans and holdovers from that dynasty era that they can't really move on from. They still draw tickets. People still come to see them. They still perform pretty well. So they're waiting for them to move on before they can go full rebuild. They're still starting a bunch of young players. Bochy, their coach who led them through that dynasty, admitted he's retiring at the end of the year. So that sort of stinks. They traded Andrew McCutchen to the Phillies. So that experiment didn't really work out. And they missed out on Bryce Harper. So only signed a few middling free agents to sort of fill out their team, and they're sort of going to be rebuilding going forward. But that being said, I do see a lot of upside for Bumgarner. He is the number 1 starter for a team no doubt about that, and that is extremely important. He is a former generational talent who I believe is going to make a good faith comeback for the franchise, be the veteran leader, see his coach that helped get him a bunch of titles and on the map out with a great season. So there's definitely a lot of incentive here, a lot of talent and history to get behind if you want to make the argument he could have a resurgence, and I believe he will definitely have a very good year. So he's going to be a stabilizing force for that team, and I see that as a very big part of the argument and why I would buy into Bumgarner and have on a few of my teams. So I definitely like him. However, I do want to mention that the fact that I think their losses might pile up at the end of the season, it might lead to him not playing or them resting him, not needing him to play, playing some of their younger guys. So that's a little bit alarming. With Robbie Ray and the Diamondbacks, a little bit of the same thing as with the Giants. They're just beginning their rebuild. They just traded Paul Goldschmidt. They have possibly one of the worst hitting lineups in the league. Their 2, 3, and 4 hitters are Eduardo Escobar, who they just signed from Minnesota, David Peralta, who's never been an all-star, and Adam Jones, who is an elderly veteran player who they just signed from Baltimore. So not really striking a lot of fear in their hearts of their opponent. It's going to be a stretch to see them get wins for their pitcher with a lot of runs, and that is obviously not good for Robbie Ray. So I do think, though, that he has a tremendous role on the team going forward. Obviously, no team is going to outwardly say they're trying to lose games, especially this earlier in the season. So if I were to say the Diamondbacks' strategy as a franchise, it would be win with starting pitching. Zach Greinke, hopefully he has a great year. Robbie Ray and Godley see a little bit of a bounce back. Luke Weaver and all those starting guys carry them a little bit, and that's what they would tell you. So as long as he's healthy, I see them giving him that role automatically as a for sure starter on their team. And just like Bumgarner, I do see them, if the losses tremendously start to pile up, he is a risk for the end of the year and sitting. But just like both of those guys, you need to win at the start of the year. You can always pick up some people to replace them at the end. So hopefully both of those guys just perform well in the regular season. Their teams exceed expectations and they can move on through the end of the year. But with that being said, I definitely think we have enough evidence to make our verdict, and I am going to go with Robbie Ray. I do think the strikeouts are the thing that tilts it in his favor here. I do like both players to have a bounce back, and they're both bad offenses and bad teams, so it's not going to weigh heavily in that realm for me, so I have to take tertiary factors into account. I would just expect Ray to get more Ks per start and Madbum to be a little bit more efficient, but pitching efficiency becomes less important when both teams are really poor. It's going to be hard to predict a win, even if your pitcher is pitching really efficient. The other team could get runs from a bullpen getting blown up, or they could just get 1 or 2 runs off of you and the other pitcher shuts out your team. So I just like Ray from start to start with those strikeouts, getting those quality start performances, and those would translate into more wins. Hopefully his team can back him up. Bumgarner could get backed up too. Like I said, I still love Bumgarner. I have a few stocks of him, and I think he's going to exceed where he's being picked. Both of these players, I think, will by the end of the year. But I just would rather buy into Ray with the age and the strikeouts, and hopefully he can put together a great year, because the Diamondbacks are really going to need it. And so are the Giants, and Madbum can do that too. But just like always, guys, I really appreciate you listening to my video. I'll leave you links to my previous ones in the other channel. I'll have another video for you tomorrow as always, and I'll talk to you then. Take it easy and have a great day.